we're jealous of that term and we don't want to get rid of it. We want to be different. And so when I meet with prosecutors from other parts of the country, we always have to explain why we're not district attorneys. I have a meeting next week. In fact, I'm president of an organization that teaches prosecutors how to try capital murder cases and complex murder cases. And so I'll be meeting district attorneys from all over the country next week, and we'll be training them. But I've been a prosecutor since I really got out of law school. I clerked with 2 different judges. I got out of law school in 1990, came down from the upstate. I'm from Simpsonville, went to Furman University, and then went to USC Law School. As far as who I am, I tell you, growing up, I always knew I wanted to go to law school. I was interested in government. I was interested in politics, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And got into politics when I was a young kid. I remember when a guy by the name of Ronald Reagan ran in 1976, I was a young kid at the time. In 1976, I was 11 years old, and I was telling my dad he needed to vote for that guy. And my dad was brushing me aside, saying, I'm way too young to understand this type of stuff. And but by the time I was in college and Reagan was running for a second term, Dad's like, you know what, I think you figured something out. And so when I told him I was going to law school, he said that was a good thing too, because I argue all the time. And he said, my mouth and my body don't go together. I need a job where I can argue but not worry about somebody beating me up. I need security. So if y'all met my number 2 guy, he works out 6 days a week. He's huge. And we've known each other for 30 years. And so I've always been the mouth, he's the muscle. But no, I've been prosecuting. I joined this solicitor's office in 1994 with Donnie Myers. Some of y'all may remember him. He prosecuted and held this position for 40 years. And within 3 weeks on the job, I tried my first case. Within 3 months, I was involved in my first murder trial. And I'm one of those guys, I've never kept up with how many trials I've tried, how many I've won or lost, because I'm so competitive. I don't want what I do to be about a record. I want it to be about the case that's in front of me, doing what's right. And I met my wife through this job. My wife's at home right now. She used to run all of our diversion programs. Those are the second chance programs. She's not a lawyer, but somebody who got in trouble for the first time, they'd never been in criminal court before, they could go through one of our programs and come out and start their life over. She started the first drug court program in the state of South Carolina for addicts that are constantly getting in trouble, and we know if we let them out of prison or jail, they're going to get in trouble again. It's highly successful. The programs she ran and that are continuing to run are roughly 90% successful. So we've had a good balance in both my home and our office. But there came a time I knew Donnie was going to be stepping down, and I had left briefly to go to the Attorney General's office. I was working with Alan Wilson. I've known him for 30 years. Known him before he went to law school, and I went over to be his number 2 guy. And was in training for that position when Solicitor Myers made it clear he wasn't going to run again. And I'm like, well, I'm coming home. I'm running. And I ran, and I took office in 2017. And I tell you what we found out here. In Saluda, but also in McCormick and Edgefield, some of the dockets, it had been done kind of an old-fashioned way. The dockets had kind of stacked up. And we instituted a policy where we were going to hit the dockets really hard. Not giving away cases, but prosecuting hard. Focus on our violent cases to see if we can make people plead guilty because we leave such an impact on what we do in the courtroom. And by doing that, here's what we've done. We have reduced, since the time I came on, the overall docket at any time compared to today is almost a 60% reduction in what's pending. At the time when I came on in 2017, there were like 360 some odd warrants pending. Today, we checked, we've got court running right now down the road in Saluda, the courthouse. We have 117 warrants pending. That means about 58 defendants, I think, pending here in General Sessions Court, not family court, not Master's Court. And so we're running that right now. Typically what we'll do when we come out here typically 8 weeks to 9 weeks a year. Run court, we'll run a week, we'll have a week off and run another week. And what it does is it gives everybody a chance to really absorb that docket and us to send a message by what we're doing in that courtroom. And what happens if we try one case, it may look like it's backing us up, but those trials, when people see the results of those trials, they go, you know what, I think I want to plead guilty. That's how you drive a plea docket, as opposed to just giving your cases away. You use your trials, hitting the hard cases, to make the defendants understand, look, if you go to trial, there's a price to pay, and it's an ugly one, so plead up. As a result, and this is true really statistically for most of the state, usually it's about 1% of the cases go to trial out of all that we have pending. Sometimes people will plead guilty right at the last minute, but you'd be amazed how many people come in after they've been arrested, we've indicted them, they come in and go, all right, I'll plead. And the reputation of this circuit, which is Lexington, but it's also Saluda, it's McCormick, it's Edgefield County, I represent all 4 counties. The reputation we have in these 4 counties is that we mean business. And statewide, here's what statistically we are. Saluda, Edgefield, and McCormick almost consistently have the best, most efficient dockets in South Carolina out of the 46 counties. Now, as far as life out here and the rate of crime, this is also one of the lowest, the crime rates in the safety. I think SLED did an evaluation, I forget how they phrased it, but for violent crime and property crimes, Saluda County is considered to be one of the top 5 counties, the safest counties in the state of South Carolina, along with McCormick and Edgefield. Lexington's my tough nut to crack. Whereas I have 117 warrants pending here, I have about 5,500 pending in Lexington. And a lot of what we deal with is spillover from Richland County, but it's also just because Lexington's growing so fast. And it's just harder to stay on top of. So I don't do it all by myself. Out here, we have a dedicated group of prosecutors who do nothing but Saluda, they do Edgefield, and they do McCormick. So they'll be running court all week this week. Next week, they'll be prepping for the week that's coming up. And then when it comes time to go to Edgefield, they'll be ready to go. When it comes time to go to McCormick, they'll be ready to go. They'll be calling cases and running straight court and just running with it. So that's how we do. Meanwhile, Lexington's running every other week pretty much. Sometimes every week because we have so many cases. And overall, I've got about 33 attorneys, prosecutors in our office. I've got 3 dedicated to doing family court prosecution, and that includes out here. So a lot of your juveniles that commit a crime, we don't bring them up to General Sessions Court. We prosecute them in family court. And then we have, we also do some magistrate prosecutions, but very few. Most of those we do like domestic violence. We do that throughout the entire circuit. We just don't have the manpower. We've asked the state for that so that law enforcement doesn't need to prosecute any cases. We can handle that for them. But that's what I do. And then me personally, I get in the courtroom. Although I'm the head of the office, I'm in charge of budgets, I'm in charge of personnel. That's why I have a number 2 guy as well. He's done all of this. He's prosecuted cases. But I like to get in the courtroom. I typically try murder cases or complex cases, high profile cases. People want to see the guy they elected, and I love to get in there. It's kind of it might sound kind of crazy, but it's kind of a relief for me to get away from the personnel stuff and from the budget stuff. Those are, for me, the biggest headaches. Getting in the courtroom is just pleasant for me. When I mentioned that I got in the courtroom for the first time after several weeks of being hired, I was on my feet, and within 5 minutes I realized I love this. And every time I've gotten on my feet in the courtroom, I feel that. I've had a raging fever in a capital murder case. I got on my feet, and it's like it goes away, and I feel like I've, just walked out of the gym and ready to go. Of course, I'm dead as can be after the trial. But that's what I do. I love leading from the front. One of the people that we hired on when I was a deputy solicitor, I used to run the Lexington office, was David Stumbo. That's how I got to know David. He had just gotten out of law school, and he came over to Lexington and said, hey, do y'all have a job? And I'm like, we don't, but we started talking. I was like, man, I really like you. So he ended up going over to the AG's office, and when we had an opening, I called him up and said, David, you need to meet me for lunch. And I put a sales pitch on him, and we brought him over to Lexington. So David and I have prosecuted cases together. He's a fantastic prosecutor, and he ended up going back to the AGs and ultimately running for solicitor. He had the same job I've had, but he represented Greenwood, Newberry, Abbeville, and Lawrence County. Those are his 4 counties. And last year, I think it was December, we had a meeting up in North Carolina, and I pulled him aside with his wife, and I had my wife, and I said, David, you need to run for AG. We pulled a couple other people in, and I said, you need to run. So I said, you'll be a great guy, you're conservative, you're a good Christian man, but more than that, you're a good prosecutor, and law enforcement respects you, all the prosecutors respect you, and that's, you know, I helped, I think, sway his wife. David got it. David, I thought, was ready to jump in this thing, but I think he's going to be a great AG. And like I said, I've known him forever, and it's great to be able to just pick up the phone and know who my AG is. But that's kind of in a nutshell what I do, what my office does. But I'd love to have some questions from y'all.
Where are you headquartered out of?
Well, of course, Lexington, I'm in the courthouse. Here in Saluda, we've got an office in this courthouse, a permanent office. And then in Edgefield, we've got the building right next to the courthouse. You know, right on the square. It's a building that was built like in 1904. It's right next to the old county courthouse. And it's on the square. When you're driving in, you look at the courthouse and our office. It's a 2-story building, so we've got that.
So how many attorneys are in your office?
Right now, it's like 33, but we've got about 4 openings. It's just funding to have those positions fully funded. So, but most everybody is doing general sessions work. And so we have 3 people full-time doing that out here. But what we'll do is sometimes we'll come out and we'll bring 1 or 2 others and really focus on specific cases and augment what they're doing out here. But really my ultimate goal is the guy I've got kind of managing the docket out here is a guy named Doug Fender, and he's a genius at managing a docket. He's just absolutely brilliant. And I would love someday where he can kind of manage all the dockets, because like I said, Lexington's the tough one, and if he can crack that nut, I'd be home free. But he's shown everybody this is the model of how you do it. And then we have 2 lady prosecutors with them, Jackie and Cassie. They both are over there in Edgefield, and they're fantastic. They've prosecuted murders. I think Jackie's got over 30 years experience, and Cassie, she's probably got in the range of 15 to 20. And so they're fantastic. They're not lightweights, they're heavyweight hitters. And the judges love them. We have a good relationship with our judges, and they respect what we do. So it's been enjoyable having them on board.
Speaking as a former correctional officer.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how much influence the Attorney General's office has on the administration of the corrections department and the hiring and the training of personnel in the corrections department. But of all the government agencies I've ever worked for, South Carolina Department of Corrections doesn't seem to attract, shall I say, cream of the crop.
Yes, sir. I've seen it too. The AG really doesn't have anything to do with that, but he can have enough influence on it. He has to sign off on all lawyer positions there, but more importantly, if he's got a good working relationship with who heads up the prison system, like prior to this, it was Brian Sterling, who's now the U.S. Attorney. We could sometimes have a joint idea on how to handle what was going on in the prison system that would help us as well. Because one of the issues we've seen, like particularly with these big drug dealers, we'll send them to prison, well, they're home free over there.
Yeah.
They're in with their gangs, they're untouchable, they have phones, because, you know, nobody was jamming their phones. We've been asking the federal government for years, and now it's finally just started to happen. But we've had hits put out on people. We've had major drug deals all orchestrated from our jails. And it's amazing. And you're right, you know, I think it was just the last few weeks we saw some more people from the Department of Corrections arrested. So it's an ongoing battle. They're trying to raise the pay, qualifications, but it's tough, you know, to get people that want to be in that system, because it's a tough system, as you know.
I about starved to death working there.
Yeah, yeah.
And when a battery went out in my car, I had to go borrow money to buy a battery.
Wow.
And I decided, this is not where, I was there for 6 months, and I figured out, this is not where I need to be. I can't afford to work here.
It's a tough environment, and it is, you have to be called to it, I guess, because you're not going to make much in the way of money, and it's a dangerous job.
It is.
Doesn't matter where you are in the facility, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So,
Is that funded and arranged through the county or through the state?
that's a state. That's a state. Now, our local jails are county funded, and but the prison system is all state. And then we'll have federal prisons. So like Edgefield's got a federal prison out there as well. You know, that's all federal, only federal inmates go there. So our inmates go to state facilities. What happens when we try them and convict them, they all go to Columbia initially. And they go through R&E, yep, reception and evaluation, and then they determine where they go after that, depending on how violent the crime was, health issues, things like that. They'll see, all right, this institution's best suited for this particular person. And then what they've tried to do over the last few years, and it may be since you've left a long time ago, but they're trying to say if you're in there for murder or something in there for a long time life, that the better you behave, you can get in a facility that's a step down where you have a lot more freedom, whereas others are in there for, you know, locked up 23 hours. It's about my time.
No,
No.
it's
Okay.
just that I have no idea what
She
time
was
it is.
just kidding.
Oh yeah, you know what, I'm at 6:51 right now.
Yeah, we're good, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked at admin say, you're familiar with that, you know, and some of the dorms, and then sometimes the front gate.
Yeah.
It was just my personal experience. It seemed like SCGC went out of their way to find the least ambitious, the laziest,
Yeah.
and the most inept people that they could hire.
It does look that way sometimes. I think it's gotten a little bit better. They've tried really hard. Brian Sterling did a lot to try to turn things around, and what happened, the General Assembly liked him and respected him, so they started giving him more money. And he worked real closely with SLED and with prosecutors to try to figure out how do we all work together, because we can still prosecute cases that occur within prisons within my circuit. So I have a state prison in McCormick, and we'll have, you know, stabbings out there, we'll have rapes, and we'll prosecute those sometimes as well. So we do a variety.
So basically, if it was a higher salary, they would get higher caliber people, correct?
That's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. You know, for me, it's, you want to have not just pay, but quality of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if the more professional that you make a job, people are more attuned to that because they want to belong to something that's very professional. And I think that's where they've really tried to work on that as well. I think Brian, his current guy in there, I think is trying to do what Brian Sterling was doing, and I can't remember his name. I don't know him. I knew Brian for many years before he got in. But that's what they're trying to do, not just money, but trying to raise the standard of what it is to be, you know, a prison guard.
Yeah, because again, the majority of that I work with, some of the most dysfunctional people I've ever had the pleasure or displeasure of having. And these people are supposed to have you back in case something goes down, and you're like, I don't think so. I don't think I
The
can
bigger
trust
problem
this.
today, I think, that we've seen is really with the juveniles, with the, you know, the juvenile facilities. And what you're going to find out on county council too is if the sheriff arrests a juvenile, puts them in the county facility, generally a county facility can't hold a juvenile, so he's got to take them to the state facility, and they charge you until we prosecute.
It's like $100 a day or something like
Yes,
that?
it's incredible. And so it's almost like, all right, we've got to do something with this case, bump it ahead of everybody else to take care of it.
My sister, she's an instructor in the juvenile division. She teaches English and science.
One of the most violent people I've ever prosecuted was a little 16-year-old. She was this tall. She scared all the guards, the men too. When we had her in our jail, the county jail, we moved her over to try her. She took over the whole women's wing, and there were a lot bigger women, a lot more violent. She was like a child of the devil. I'm going to tell you. She when she said she's going to put a hit on somebody, she had the connections.
Yeah.
She was one of those that had no sense of
Sociopath.
yeah, very much so. Wow. So one of the scariest people I've ever dealt with. That was a few years ago. But yeah, I've prosecuted countless murders. I've done multiple capital cases. The last one I did was Lexington, and we had a father that killed his 5 kids. Their ages were, the youngest was 1 year old and the oldest was 8.
That was the one that got on bath salts or whatever, supposedly. And
Yeah, synthetic marijuana, but what he ends up saying is he wasn't high at the time, and you know, he had psychologists from all over the country coming in saying he's insane, and we had a state doctor look at him and go, no, he's just mean, just mean.
Did he say why he did it, ever?
He, the first child he said was an accident when he spanked the child, but this child was a child he'd been abusing. DSS had dropped the ball on this child. This child had gone through so much. He says, I accidentally killed a child, and then I'm thinking I'm going to call the cops, but then I knew they'd arrest me for murder, which showed he knew right from wrong. And then he literally watched an episode of a movie where a man's in prison and what they do to inmates that hurt young kids. And he decided he's going to get rid of the other 4. He didn't want his ex-wife to have the kids. But said, I was just sending them to be with Jesus with their brother, so it wasn't really a bad thing. Our jury didn't agree with that.
Well, I live right down the road from Susan Smith.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
He went to Alabama or something like that.
He went through Alabama, and they caught him in Mississippi. Dumped the children's bodies in Alabama. It's one of the most traumatizing cases we've tried. I had to take my team of seasoned prosecutors and staff to counseling after that, because it was just, with kids, it's just so much more difficult.
It is.
You know, my wife came and watched that trial, and I wasn't thinking anything about it. So, you know, next trial, I'm like, do you want to come sit in that case? She just started crying. I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't take care of my wife. I exposed her to all of that, and I've been taking care of everybody but my wife. She was taking care of me. It's just, it's tough.
Do you notice any trends since you say you've been in office since 2017? Is crime going down? Do you notice certain types of crimes increasing? I know you say we're fairly good in this area with our court docket and with lower crime than other places. But are there any certain crimes or types of crimes, and I guess really what I'm beating around the bush is, I know that we have a large illegal population in Saluda County. Has that caused our crime to go up any at all?
Honestly, from what we're seeing, it hasn't. And I will tell you why. One reason why, if they commit a crime against the other person, that victim doesn't want to come forward. And so there's a lot of unreported crime in the undocumented illegal aliens. Even though there is a law, federal law, saying if you have been victimized, even though you're here illegally, the law will protect you, because we don't want somebody taking advantage of these folks and just wholesale committing crimes. But we haven't seen a whole lot of that. But I will tell you, one reason is probably because ICE is picking them up. I mean, we've met with ICE. The only thing we've asked with ICE is when we have a really violent case, don't ship them out of the country. Let us try them first. Because if they ship them out of the country, they can just come right back. And if they commit a violent crime, we want them to pay for it. So that's been the big meeting we had with ICE. So we've had a great working relationship with ICE. Local law enforcement's worked real well with them. But probably one of the biggest trends we've seen are murder cases and property crimes drop down since COVID, believe it or not. With COVID, I know Lexington alone had 22 murders, I think it was, in the year 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. And last year we had 4 in Lexington, which is unheard of. I'd never had that few. We've already passed that, we're probably at 5 or 6 right now in Lexington alone, and we might have another one tonight in Saluda. I gotta talk with Josh what his call was about. But overall, those crimes have come down. But one shift I've seen is in the drug business. Used to be meth. Years ago, it was made, people would cook it up out in the woods, and you could smell it for a mile away. And so cops knew, go to the smell. Then, when we passed all those laws saying limiting on the antihistamines and things, or the decongestants that they use in their recipe, we saw people were doing what they call one-pot cooking it right then and there. And they might be sitting in the parking lot at Walmart doing it. Now, all that's pretty much gone. It's the Mexican cartels. So you have high-grade, very cheap meth throughout the country now. And fentanyl, which most of that seems to be coming from China, from what my guys tell me, but it comes through Mexico. So we're seeing a lot of that. There's high-grade meth, and then fentanyl and opioids that we had not seen before. And we just got the first conviction in South Carolina last week for someone selling fentanyl that they knew would kill somebody, and somebody died from it. So it's the first homicide by fentanyl prosecution in the state of South Carolina. We did that last week.
Have you seen an impact? I mean, we read that the Trump administration is doing a lot to well, obviously stopping a lot at the border. Is that still going up?
Well, the drugs
under
are
Trump?
still coming in. I mean, it's, you know, he has done an awful lot. I mean, he has shut down the border to a trickle. It was wide open, literally, under the Biden administration. It really was. I mean, it's just a free-for-all, which made it very easy to get drugs in and out of the country as well. But drugs, you know, it's a sophisticated business, very sophisticated business. So they know how to bypass the border. They have tunnels, very extensive tunnel systems to get into the U.S., and how to get that stuff throughout and distribute it throughout the country. The way I've been trained by my gang guys is what they do is they meet with gangs. They cut deals with gangs to become their distributors. So sometimes you even have opposing gangs that are doing business all together. It's a business. It's just a very violent one.
And we've got 20,000 miles of coastline.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a hard thing to patrol. It really is. And it's, you know, it's through the air, under the ground, it's through the ocean. And you know, we're a free country, so that our borders are always jammed up with people trying to come in. I know I had to go to Canada. We were picking up one of my murder defendants up there and talking to the officers up there, and I was stunned just seeing the crowds in Canada coming into the U.S. And you know, I know Mexico would make that look like child's play.
I have one more question. Does anybody else have a question? My question is, you know, the Republican Party last year, we came closer than we have, you know, trying to get real judicial reform done.
Yep.
As a person who tries cases in the courtroom, what do you basically feel about the caliber of judges that we're putting on the bench in South Carolina?
Many of the judges I deal with are fine, but it's not because of the system we use to elect them. And the system we have, I've been against and opposed forever. I've been on the record long before this past election. The biggest issue I've seen is when a legislator stands in front of a judge in a courtroom and he's representing a defendant. If he needs a continuance, he gets it. Because that judge knows that guy holds my robe. That's a horrible system. And so even when you have a good legislator, whether it's civil court or criminal court, and he's doing his job and the judge rules for him, it makes the judge look crooked, and it makes the legislator look crooked, even if they've done their job. That's a horrible system, because everybody sitting in that courtroom is going to go, I saw what just happened. My experience is the biggest problem has been not so much the judges, but just a handful of legislators who use it openly to say, this is how it needs to run. Where they come in and say, I'm not trying my case this month. Not happening. You know, I need another extension, and so it gets booted for a year. I wrestled with one guy, and it took 5 years to try a case. And it was just a brutal process. So I was having to tell the father, look, the judge in this case is a good guy. But look, he has to say, do I want to continue on my job or not? And it makes him look bad. And I know that judge was on the spot. And I've talked to judges, and many of the judges, like the ones we have in this circuit, I get along with great. They do a great job. But it's unfair for them to have a legislator down there. And here I am with my victims, and then there's a legislator with this guy who's done something horrible, and that guy gets to walk out the door, but other defendants don't. Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the man who just got the Republican nomination for governor? His
Alan Wilson?
his plan for
Yep,
making new judges. Are you familiar with all?
I am.
Support?
I do. I do. Alan and I have talked a lot about judicial reform. I've talked a lot about it with David Stumbo. I think the focus for me has been more on our legislators, and it's just a few. But the system overall just appears bad and looks bad. And when the legislature can hire, set the pay, and fire a judge at will, you have an employer-employee relationship, and that's what needs to change. Because there are a lot of judges who've become judges because they really were called to do that, and they're good at it. But their integrity, when they have a legislator in front of them, is called into question, sometimes even when they do the right thing, and that shouldn't happen.
So essentially, we don't have 3 separate branches of government.
We don't in South Carolina. South Carolina's a throwback to the 1800s where the legislature dominated government. That's why we have a weak governor's position. But really coming out of the Civil War, when we redid our Constitution, it was also by design. We figured if the Yankees came in here again and appointed a governor, put somebody in place, well, the legislature would be the powerful place. And we would run the courts. And that's how we've done it. And, you know, once you invest power somewhere, it's hard to get it out. And the biggest problem that I have found with judicial reform is the lawyer legislators. They all feel like you're attacking them and calling them corrupt. I'm like, that's why for many of them, I haven't even used the term corrupt, although everybody else is like, what do you call it? It's just a horrible system, and it makes them look bad. So, you know, Alan's got some very good ideas, and he's made some heavy inroads where, as prosecutors, we haven't been able to. They always see us as just whining because they think we lose, and I'm like, we win most of the time. We're not whining. This is just wrong.
Yeah, I really do think, and you know, this is my first term as a county chairman, and I talk to chairmen in other counties, and I really do think that the Republican Party is really focused on that issue.
And I hope so.
And it has surprised me how much influence that we can have, particularly in elections.
Yep. The Republican Party can have a bigger impact than prosecutors would ever have. Because when I'm talking to the lawyer legislators, we're talking courtroom talk. And they just see me as a combatant. But if they know that their constituents and the grassroots are saying this is a bad system, then regardless of how it affects their pocketbook or what they think of the system, they're going to make changes. And that's where we really need the party. We need the state Republican Party to step in as well, but with the backing of all 46 counties saying this is what we want, so your local legislators feel it, and that it's a system where, like, Alan's got a very balanced system here. you strengthen the executive function of the governor, letting him appoint people to the screening committee. There should be no legislators on that screening committee. They should be term limited. And, you know, and then they go through and they should be able to say, here's who's come through, the governor picks, and if he picks bad, everybody knows who to blame. It's the governor. You know, you pick somebody really bad. You can't be complaining about bad judges. You put them on. You put her on. So, and right now, no one, if you have a bad judge, everybody's like, I didn't vote for them. And no one knows if they did or not. It's horrible. It's horrible.
So Rick, how is your office funded? So, I mean, is it divided between the counties?
What we do is this, we have county funding and state funding. Now, what we've done with Edgefield, McCormick, and Saluda, years and years ago, there was an agreement reached where we do a joint funding. So it's by percentage. And I can't remember what Saluda's percentage is. And so I submit a budget and all the counties get to see what I'm doing. And generally, it's been like clockwork as far as getting it done. We have not had any blowback.
Yeah, I thought I looked at that, was on I reckon the budget committee, we were looking at it and had a workshop, I went to it, and I noticed that the solicitor's office was on there, and I didn't notice.
And you may see Tri-County, and that's what that would be.
Okay.
And there's an agreement goes way back, because many years ago, McCormick was so poor, they weren't contributing at all. And so I think everybody sat down and came to a percentage agreement. Edgefield carries the most, because that's the larger county. I think they're right close to 30,000 people, and Saluda is roughly 20,000. And then McCormick is barely 10,000 people, and they've actually grown. I think the biggest industry they have is a retirement industry out on the lake. But that's how we do it. And then we get state funding. Is
How
that?
many people in Lexington now?
They're like, I think it's close to 320,000. So I mean, it's crazy. Back when this system was created where you had Lexington and they said we're going to pair a big county with smaller counties, the Edgefield, McCormick, Saluda, their population pretty much equaled Lexington's back in the day. And that was kind of the thinking, you know, to balance it out a little bit. And yeah, that changed a long time ago. It really has.
So does your office struggle to keep up with the workload? I mean, I know you say you change some stuff around.
We, I won't say struggle, because we're at any given time either first or second place as far as efficiently moving our dockets, but we work nonstop. It is, it's brutal. Any weekend you go in, our guys are working on weekends. You know,
I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, with that many people in Lexington, you know, you got to have that many more crimes being committed.
You do, and it's you've got to be committed to it, because these guys can make a lot more money doing something else. But to me, it's a calling. I love this job. I love doing what I do. It's never, I didn't grow up with money, so it's like, you know, I didn't know what it was like to have a lot of money anyway. I get paid well now as a solicitor, but you know, I know in all my years with Donnie, I never asked for a raise. I just worked hard and he took care of me, you know, and that's what I try to do. And my ultimate goal is not just what the dockets look like when I leave, but I want to have an office in place full of top-tier prosecutors who will step right in and take this office and go where I couldn't take it, you know, and continue focusing on the violent crimes, keeping our crime rates down if we can by telling criminals, look, it doesn't pay to play here, go somewhere else. And that's my goal. You know, I mean, everybody's names will be forgotten at some point in this world, but the method of doing business is what I want to live on.
Any other questions?
Y'all know I'm a talker. Y'all can tell. Well, I want to tell you, thank y'all for having me. It's been a long time coming, so thank you, Madam Chairman, and for having me, and thank y'all for having me here. Thank you for feeding me. Thank you for banana pudding. I want to tell my wife I had good banana pudding tonight.
I'll send you the recipe so she can make
You know
it.
what? Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.